everybody. This is Kevin McPherson. This is, as you know, this is HogvilleNET YouTube Live, but you also know that it's Cinco de Mayo. So happy Cinco de Mayo for those who celebrate. For those who don't, it's still a happy Monday to you. Let's get some of that, maybe a little glare off of there. Thank you for joining me. We've actually got intel today as we talk Arkansas Razorbacks basketball, and we've been kind of wondering and fumbling around in the dark with what's going to happen to close out this roster for the 25-26 season. Obviously, John Calipari's second run in Arkansas' second season leading the program. So there's several things here. Really, it's not a whole lot that we've heard. But we've been talking about several possibilities, I guess is the way to put that, of how you might land this. Do you get do you go after a big fish and try to do it that way and add one more, shiny new toy to the situation? Do you close it out with a role player, sort of a backup dev piece? Maybe two of those. We've identified lack of shooting as a problem at Arkansas when we look at the way the roster looks with 10 players, which includes Carter Knox, because I think we're still on this idea that he's likely to come back. So you got several things going on there in terms of the talking points of what do they need? They need shooting, maybe some more front court depth, these kind of things. But after talking with the staff again this morning, we're kind of back at where we were a couple of weeks ago when they pumped the brakes on everything and said, we're really happy with the roster. If something makes sense, it's going to be one of those kind of things. And when I circle back to a name like Jameer Watkins, it's really the answer it was 2 weeks ago. And not specifically to him, but any kind of a big name player that might be trying to prize out a big NIL payday, which you would expect Jameer Watkins to do. And it's been reported he will if he comes back to school. It's one of those things where Arkansas's not in it. A player like that would have to accept a much less amount to come to Arkansas, which isn't going to happen for somebody like that. And so the idea of adding a splash piece to the roster sounds more and more like a pipe dream and less like a reality. Now, one thing is true, and that's the fact that if a Carter Knox stayed in the NBA draft, that Arkansas then would free up NIL money. It would free up what you would project as one of your top players, one of your true key core guys. And a guy like a Jameer Watkins would maybe come back into the back into the fold. So you don't know what's going to happen with Carter Knox. You think you do. And I think that's why you continue to pursue even other big fish, because you've got to recruit as though you might not have him back. But that doesn't mean that you'll land him or that you'll pursue him if you're getting Carter Knox back. It's sounding more and more like Arkansas is less inclined to go after a guy like Jameer Watkins or maybe somebody else. When you look at those situations, you say to yourself, well, those would be great additions. Though, a player like that can elevate what you're doing. While that's true in many senses, it can also be a detraction from what's already considered by many. You look at some of these way too early polls to be a top 10 ranked, will be a top 10 ranked team. Now, there's a long way to go. Injuries, those types of things really hurt Arkansas last year. And you're thinking to yourself, well, just from that standpoint, you at least need to add more depth. But there's a difference between the kind of depth that a Jameer Watkins or a Darian Williams. Excuse me, folks. I didn't realize my voice was so jacked up today. I haven't started doing any talking until now in an earlier phone call. But you get the picture. It's seeming more and more like, based on these conversations, that Arkansas is not looking to add another jewel in the crown. It would be more like back in depth, if anything. And so that seems to be more and more of a reality right now. Again, if you lose Carter Knox stays in, then that changes that narrative. But Carter Knox is one of your big fish. That's a big recruiting win in retention if he turns around and eventually withdraws from the draft. The deadline to do that's May 28th, just as a reminder. But I think it's important because you look at him, you look at Darius Acuff Jr. We're going to talk about his big last several days in Allen Iverson Classic All-American game and the event surrounding it. But you look at guys like Acuff and Carter Knox and Malik Ewan, Trevor Brazile on some level, guys you're bringing back. We've said multiple times there's a handful of players that you're not only going to have big roles, but have potential for all league caliber stuff. You can only really have so many of those kind of guys. You're not going to recruit over them and bring in players. They're going to take up the minutes on the court and maybe not add much more to what you're doing. And maybe could cause, I won't say a rift, but a lack of chemistry and some problems for guys that you have a plan for in your retention. You've told them these are the roles to expect. Here's what we think you've developed into. Here's our program continuity for a team that was Sweet 16 and a player or two away from being an Elite 8 program. So you understand why they are thinking in this way. The other part of it's NIL. How do they want to use it? And so, now that we're 5 minutes in, let's just say it one more time. It's looking less and less likely a guy like Jameer Watkins will be in the fold unless a Carter Knox is not coming back. And who knows? Jameer Watkins, obviously in the NBA draft process, he's got a decision to make there as well. Now, the draft combine is next week, begins next week, May 11th through the 18th. The 2 days leading up to that, both events in Chicago, is the NBA G League Elite Camp, the 10th through the 11th. And so important because you have 3 Hogs, KK Carter Knox, the one that we think is the one that you're really believing has a path to come back in terms of less likely to get drafted as it looks now. Combine and individual team workouts, we say it all the time, couldn't move the needle on it, but we're talking about how it looks now. Adu Thero technically has a path back to school. He didn't enter the portal. He can't do that now. The folks I talk to think it's very unlikely that he'll come back to school, that he's going to more than likely stay the course with the pro process. And for now, that's the NBA draft. But I'm told there's a way that he could come back in terms of he hasn't done too much at this point to make himself ineligible. So we'll keep an eye on that. It seems like a remote possibility. There's some think it's 50-50. I've had people sending me texts and asking me about it, and they're hearing that there's a good chance. Okay, we'll see. But from the folks I talk to and trust, it's not as likely that he'll do that. Boogie Fland obviously entered the portal and is in the draft process. He's 100% focused on the draft process. I think Thero is too. I think Knox it's more about feedback and opportunity, and we'll see how much he can move the needle. And then Nellie Davis, and we mentioned that every NBA draft person I talked to that thought Knox was coming back, I told you, I think it was a little over a week ago when we did a Carter Knox segment, that all of them, everyone to a person, felt like he would get invited to the combine. Well, those 3 were Knox, Thero, and Fland, as expected. So that doesn't change that math, because they were saying then, yeah, he'll get invited and he may do well and this and that, but everybody thought, wouldn't even give me a draft range. They feel like now again, that can change based on performance and how he does in some of this stuff. But as it looks now, that didn't really move the needle in terms of just being invited to the combine. Nellie Davis invited to the G League Elite Camp for the 2nd consecutive year. He backed out last year because he had that NIL deal he agreed to with Arkansas and was coming back to college. And so we know how that played out. This time around, Nelly, who did well at the PIT, the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament, that's for seniors that are trying to improve their pro stock, and this is the next step for him. Anywhere from a handful to 10 players probably from the G League Elite Camp in Chicago will be invited to move on over to the draft combine, which begins at the end of the Elite Camp, and that's all in Chicago. So there's not like you have to figure a bunch of stuff out and fly people around the country to make that happen. So Nellie Davis is going to have an opportunity, if he performs well in the Elite Camp, to be part of that combine. So you continue to hear draft ranges for Thero and Fland anywhere late first round to somewhere mid to late second round. It's kind of all over the map there. Again, Carter Knox, I think there was one mock a week or so ago. We talked about it, projected him at 36, and that was the only place he really appeared. He was 59th on Jonathan Givoni's big board, and we know there are 59 picks in the 2 rounds. So he's saying there's a chance. So just kind of recovering some of that stuff again. But look, I really think as we get through this process, and with that May 28th deadline, I still really feel the same way I did before. Until something changes and a Carter Knox moves the needle, I think he's coming back. I think Thero stays in. I think Flam probably stays in. If he doesn't, it doesn't I don't think he'll end up at Arkansas just because he entered the um, the portal doesn't mean that Arkansas wouldn't be an option. Last year, that was what Trevor in Brazil did. He was both in the draft process, went to the combine, worked out there, did the measurables, all that testing, interviews, and then he also was in the portal, and then he ended up at Arkansas. The difference here is I don't see Arkansas having room for him because of that crowded lead guard spot. That's what he is. It doesn't make sense for him to come back and divvy up those minutes, what's already going to be hard to figure out between DJ Wagner and Darius Acuff Jr. There's just not it does not seem viable to me. So I don't see a path back to Arkansas for him. But either way, I think it's more than likely that both he and Fland and Thero stay in. Nelly can't come back to school. We know that. And we'll see what Nelly's able to accomplish. I don't know that he'll end up being a guy that earns, can do enough to get drafted. I just don't foresee that. But these opportunities, the more that you do well and the more that you're seeing, the more that hopefully you perform well, can open up opportunities for him to get on a summer league roster, an NBA summer league roster, which then could help him, escalate to maybe doing what guys like Daryl Macon did, Stanley Amude, some of these guys, Ricky Council the fourth, get a two-way deal to begin with and build from there. Certainly can help you get a spot in the G League, and there are players that go that route before they get any two-way deal and before they get any Exhibit 10 or some of these other contracts they get, 1 year non-guaranteed, those kind of things. They have to do the G League for a while, strictly. And so there's more than one way to do it. So you hope Nelly Davis has a path there. So no splash. It doesn't look like it right now. Arkansas's not looking to add a splash piece. So just that's what it is right now. I will say this. I do think there's some definite traction. We mentioned this, I think, the last time we were on Thursday. It's been talked about now over the weekend. I spent time with his dad, Terrion Burgess, 6'9" combo forward out of Benton, ranked 81st. The last Rivals check I did on their rankings, a 4-star. ESPN ranks him a 4-star. A previous top 20 talent, then it was top 35. Dealing with injuries all last year and not performing up to his standards, or not being able to play in some of the events consistently, really hurt his stock. But look, this is a guy, again, when you look at it, 6'9", athletic, absolutely needs to get stronger. He's not been an interior kind of player in his career, more of a wing, a slasher, a pull-up shooter, not a back to the basket guy. Needs, again, to add strength, upper and lower body. But there's room for growth there. But more and more traction with the idea that he may end up being a guy that Arkansas adds to this roster. I mentioned the other day that's a possibility. He's got other opportunities at Division I, mid-major and high major. Several of those where he'll play on day one. He'll be part of a rotation with some NIL money. He's got those options. And so now it's a matter of, can you fully marry yourself into an idea where you may not have that if you come to Arkansas right away, where you're more of a developmental piece, where there may be a path for you to redshirt, or you're just emergency depth in some form or fashion, maybe similar to an Isaiah Seeley, who may or may not have a bigger role than what would be planned for a Burgess. A decision I told you guys on Thursday could be made as soon as Friday of last week, or maybe it pushes into this week. We'll see. I'm hearing different things on a timeline for that. You just never know. Sometimes these things take longer to work out. When I checked on paperwork to see if there was back-end paperwork that had been done on him last week before I came on, and I've conveyed to you that I had not heard that. Well, maybe there's something in the process, and that's happening this week. So we'll see. But I don't think we're really much different than where we were when we talked about it last week in terms of, has a final decision been made? Maybe, but I think it's still a decision that you're weighing until you make it public. Do I want to go somewhere where I can play right away and have a role and build it that way, even if that's the mid-major level? Or do I want to, go to Arkansas, which is a lifelong dream, get that coaching? Whatever the developmental role is, I'm going to be coached by the best. It's a great staff. We saw the individual player improvement for everybody last year. And we've seen what they do for players to help them get to the next level. Whether that's even the NBA, some guys just, have a different path. So we'll see. We'll see what becomes of this with Terrion Burgess. But it very everything may be lining up where he ends up being a Razorback. And then for let's see. Well, I thought I could get the comments to come up. Didn't do a very good job of that this time. But again, like I said, I spent time with his dad this weekend covering the Arkansas Hawks down at the Adidas 3SSB session in Bryan, Texas, Bryan College Station. Can you catch me up on the intel? Doesn't look like Arkansas is trying to add a splash piece to the roster to finish it out. So a Jameer Watkins, and maybe that only becomes a real option if a guy like Carter Knox stays in the draft. Terrion Burgess, more and more momentum to the idea that he'll be added to this roster. I think there's still a decision to make, just to put a final stamp on it to say, okay, we understand we may not have the same playing time opportunity in year one that we would with other real options to commit. I mean, there's some really decent programs out there that are recruiting him. Don't worry about comments. Well, I haven't seen some of the comments, so if we got some snarky comments in there, look, I mean, what, I don't pay attention to the incel frat boy chat room network. I don't care about that stuff. Sometimes I get screenshots sent to me of some things that are said. That's part of it, man. It's part of the fun, But I will say this about Burgess. At 6'9", even if it's just an emergency piece, we saw Arkansas in multiple emergencies on that front line last year. And so maybe this wouldn't be the kind of experience depth that you might get out of the portal back there, but it is at 6'9", somebody that could maybe help you in a pinch. All right, moving along here. So that's kind of, for those that are waiting for that big announcement, I mean, a lot of the stuff was in your retention and the two frontline guys that you had to have. You really added some good pieces there. And then a guy like Darius Acuff Jr., we're going to talk about here in a little bit, Malik Thomas. I mean, you've got some star power in what you retained. Portal, even though it's only two bodies that we know of so far, but important ones on the front line. And then your high school part of it, when you look at those 5 stars. So late, great news isn't always that great if you've got really good stuff lined up. Teams are still adding people from the portal. Yeah, you see, it's slowed down, obviously, because your players haven't been able to get in for a while now, and a lot of these decisions are being made. Travis Perry, not a splash guy, but, the Kentucky native that signed with Calipari, stayed at Kentucky for year one under Mark Pope, went in the portal. We were saying Ole Miss and Chris Beard kind of had a vision for him, similar to what they had for Sean Padula, I guess. And he made a commitment announcement just very recently for Ole Miss, and so he's staying in the SEC. Travis Perry, just one example of some of these announcements that are still coming from portal and guys at high major schools. Percent chance that Knox comes back. I mean, I don't know if I'd put a percentage on it. I'd say right now, if we go that route and do a percentage, I'd say Knox. 80 to 85%. I'll put it there. I'm never absolute. I'll leave out the possibility that he just blows up at the combine and blows teams away when he gets invitations to do individual team workouts, things like that. So I'll leave open the opportunity there. But we just have to see that stuff play out. Right now, everybody that's involved in the NBA draft part of it, team scouts, agency scouts, some of the draft gurus. Remember, the reporting was just a few days ago that talking to these folks, the intel was they all think that he's coming back to Arkansas. They don't really project even a draft range for him right now. Just to answer your question, and I guess we're repeating stuff there. Let's move on to the 2026 5-star news. Number 1 ranked player in the country. We've been talking a lot about him, Tyron Stokes. And we actually gave you intel a few days ago. We knew he'd visited Louisville last year. We knew that he visited Kansas recently, and we knew that he had around that time is when I said he may schedule 3 more visits. And that we think, people I was talking to, just kind of piecing it together, it would be Arkansas, Kentucky, and BYU. That was the intel nugget I gave you. Then after that, we found out pretty quickly that he actually scheduled a Kentucky visit. That's for the mid-month, around the 15th. So that's, weekend after next, somewhere like that. All right, so Kentucky, one of the names we said. It has since come out, Paul Biancardi with ESPN's his reporting, I think it was Friday, that he also plans to visit Arkansas, Oregon, and Gonzaga. So it was a little bit different, not a lot. We said three more. It ends up being four more when you include Kentucky. Arkansas, which is all we care about, right, was one of them, like I thought it would be and what the intel was, but not BYU instead. Gonzaga and Oregon. Well, we'll see if his list changes again. What happens? I know the Arkansas staff. I can confirm again after today's conversation that that's something they're lining up and they're looking forward to. That's a guy they're recruiting. Tyron Stokes, 6'7" guard, number one player in the country, triple double machine. Watched him a lot a year ago at the Nike EYBL session in Kansas City. Almost every one of his games. And the dude is a beast. Teaming up with AJ DeBonsa. There were games where Stokes was the best player on the floor, and that's saying a lot because that's a really good, circuit, the best, and you're playing your teammates AJ DeBonsa, the number one player. If it depends on who you ask in 2025. I think it's Darren Peterson, but he's right there, 1, 2, or 3. DeBonsa in a loaded class, probably the strongest class in a while in that 2025 group. But Tyron Stokes, keep an eye on that. We'll see when he schedules that. There will be no spring and summer circuit for him. He's shut that down. He's just going to do workouts and visit teams. We'll visit schools. The idea right now is that he will not reclass. He'll stay in 26. We'll see if something moves the needle there. What about NIL? You never know how you can inspire someone to make a change of heart and maybe get things lined up where they would reclass. But Arkansas's in on him. The fourth ranked player in that 2026 class, Jordan Smith Jr., 6'2" guard, 200 pounds. This dude is a machine, man, and he is an outstanding player, a clutch player, not clutch agency, but a guy that you want on the court at the end of games because he impacts winning. Seen him in several different platforms perform at the highest level, as has John Calipari. I mean, he's seen these guys in international play in addition to going out and seeing them at their schools around the country. But Jordan Smith Jr. At Paul VI Catholic High School in Virginia, I tweeted this out that a source had told me this, that Arkansas and Kentucky are two places he will visit, doesn't want to visit, will visit after Nike Peach Jam. Well, that's the championship for the EYBL in the summer. It's in July. And so it could be, late July, maybe sometime in August. I guess without giving a more specific answer in terms of, a proximity to when that ends, it could be even later after that. But I guess the idea is he's not planning to do it before Peach Jam. He's going to do his spring and summer stuff, the camps, all that, and worry about taking those visits after all that's finished and wrapped up. So Arkansas and Kentucky. Actually, the first person to report this, I think he put it out a minute or two before I did. Jacob Polachek, that does a great job covering the Kentucky Wildcats basketball program. So Stokes and Smith, now it's beyond I'd like to visit. Yes, we don't have dates yet. We have a time frame for Smith, but the idea is they're saying they are going to visit. So those are confirmed just in terms of they plan to visit. Now it's just a matter of when does it become public what those dates are for those visits coming to Arkansas. Calls flowing in here, so maybe I should have waited to do this segment later. These are basketball people calling me. All right, number 3, Caleb Holt, who I covered this weekend, watched him play on the Adidas 3 SSB, number 3 overall player in the 2026 class, a 5-star, 6'5" guard out of Grayson High School in Georgia. Calipari, when that live recruiting period opened back up back in September, this is one of the players he went out and saw multiple times at his high school. I interviewed him as well as watched him play and put some of the highlights out and his interview out on social media over the weekend in Texas. But he wants to visit Arkansas. He likes Calipari. He likes and he said it's been a minute since he's been in touch. So I don't know what to make of that right now. It could very well be since the first live eval period for D1 coaches to go out and watch players is mid-May. So they'll go out on these various circuits, whether it's Adidas, Nike, Under Armour Association, and the next pro Puma circuit. Those are kind of your 4 main ones. Coaches will fan out in the middle of this month to see these guys for the first time in this spring and summer run. And so maybe they start picking up conversations with some of these players more and more about getting visits planned. But Holt would like to visit Arkansas, he told me. I really like his game, man. He might be the best two guard. You could say he's a two or a three. I think he might be the best two guard that I've seen on the circuit for that 2026 class. Well, he's the third rated player. Tyron Stokes is kind of a jack of all trades. He can go one, two, or three, kind of a point, small forward type of guy. Stokes is. Jordan Smith, you could call him a 1-2. He can play off the ball. But Caleb Holt, I really like his ability, his athleticism, his ability to take good shots and find ways to score. He didn't force a lot, but man, he set up teammates over and over again with just making the right reads. So he's a versatile two guard. You see so many guys chasing points and stats and showing off their abilities, and he did that in a way that made sense in a teamwork kind of framework over the weekend. And the more I watched him, the more I realized, man, this guy can plug and play in some ways immediately because he's built right and he's strong already. Now, all freshmen need to add strength, and they will, but he's built right. He plays right, and there's real talent there. He can help a team, I think, right now. Season's over, but I'm just saying he's ready in terms of a lot of things, boxes I saw him check. I'm like, that dude could help a high major team be better just by the way he plays. So I like Caleb Holt. Let's keep a picture, our eyes on that, how that picture develops with Arkansas. 17th ranked Tay Kinney out of the state of Kentucky. Calipari and the staff are recruiting him before they came to Arkansas. They continue to recruit him, but this composite number 17, a 5-star, 6'2" guard, plays at overtime elite. So even though he's from Kentucky, he's in that overtime elite program where we know Calipari's dipped in there back-to-back years just since he's been at Arkansas to get Carter Knox and Malik Thomas. But Kenny told me he does plan to visit Arkansas soon. So what does that mean? I asked for a more definitive, and he said, well, they're really starting to set up and schedule visits, and he just doesn't know dates yet or even quite what the time frame will be, but he plans to visit Arkansas soon. So you can maybe put him in the bucket of he's going to visit if we want to go that route. But I love his game as well. 6'2", bouncy, strong. He's playing 5D chess out there, man. He's another guy that's just not making the game about himself. He makes everybody else better, willing facilitator, gritty, tough on defense, can finish above the rim, has a beautiful myriad of runners and floaters. It takes smart threes, and he's efficient there. Just a really good player. I understand why a lot of teams are coveting him. Some folks I talked to that cover Kentucky basketball think at the end of the day he ends up at Kentucky. I know Arkansas staff is going to recruit him, and I don't know that Arkansas staff believes that they couldn't get him at the end of the day. So Tate Kenny, keep an eye on him. We'll see what goes there. The 19th ranked player, Deron Rippey Jr., composite number 19, a 5-star, same class, also backcourt, 6'2" guard out of Blair Academy in New Jersey. Chuck Martin's been kind of the primary guy on him. We did some reporting before this weekend that Martin had been in touch with his camp the previous week. And then I believe during the weekend when I interviewed Rippey, Martin had been on the phone with him within the previous 24 hours checking on him. So Chuck Martin, our Arkansas staff, continues to recruit Deron Rippey Jr. They call him Ron, but he was also on the Adidas circuit, got to watch him play as well. And so all of these guys, a lot of talent here. Most of them are backcourt players. I guess, Tyron Stokes, I consider him, a wing. I don't see him as a 0.4. I see him as a 1 through 3. Certainly Jordan Smith Jr., Caleb Holt, Tate Kenny, Deron Rippey Jr. When you look at what Calipari's done since he's been in Arkansas, just recruiting high school, it's been guards and wings. That's what the main focus has been. Not that they haven't recruited others, but that's what they've really drilled down and brought in. And so it doesn't surprise me that we're hearing more and more visit news pick up. So the intel is, in addition to Stokes and Smith, who we kind of put tweets out about late last week, I have been talking about these other guys in the last 24 hours in terms of kind of maybe some momentum towards some visit stuff. But it's interesting when you really drill down on why some of these dates aren't out there. I still think Arkansas wants to put eyes on everybody one more time in May, at minimum, before they lock up some actual dates. And then they may expand that into some of these opportunities in June to evaluate. even in July when it really gets heavy with the live eval periods picking up, you're going to have multiple opportunities over the next 3 months, May, June, and July, and so some of these guys we may not hear the dates on their visits till even after that. Some maybe sooner. So just keep an eye on all those guys. There'll be other ones. I think there's some names that Arkansas is kind of staying low radar on right now. I know two or three of them, so we'll talk about them when we can. There was another 5-star at the Adidas event that I watched play several times. Anthony Thompson, 6'8", 6'9". Just a damn good player, man. Top 10 rated guy. He's got like a list of 15 schools. Arkansas is not on it. I talked to him for a little bit, and just this really bright young man, really good kid, and just said, honestly, because some of these players might try to milk it when they hear Calipari, Arkansas. He's like, they're not recruiting me right now. I haven't talked to them. So, we didn't do an interview to waste time and, give this idea that Arkansas is recruiting him. But we'll see if something were to change on that. But for now, that's what it is. This kid's a lefty, plays a lot on the perimeter too. He likes to shoot some threes, playing that high screen game on offense and pass out of it. And, he's got a lot of goodies in the bag. That's why he's a top 10 rated 5-star. All right. So just rounding things out, JJ Andrews, the intel here is, as of today, the staff still feels good about where they are with JJ. Class of 2026. ESPN ranks him the 22nd best player in the country. He's going to have a shot to being a McDonald's All-American. 6'6" wing, Little Rock Christian Academy. Put an announcement out. There were rumors that he was going to maybe transfer, and you kept hearing Bentonville, where his former coach at Little Rock Christian Academy, Coach Pennington's the head coach there, has been the last year for the past season, that maybe he'd transfer there, but he put an announcement out that he's staying put at Little Rock Christian Academy. But Arkansas maintains this. They feel like they prioritized him the right way, and they feel like they're in good shape. All right. So here's the thing on this. I keep saying this. We know it's down to Arkansas, LSU, and Missouri. Arkansas, just let's say that one of those teams has a better offer with NIL, and it's significant enough, and that will correlate to the role being promised or projected in minutes and how we're going to use you, and you're going to be our guy. If Arkansas is far enough away from what that is being delivered from some other team like LSU or Missouri in this case, then you have to pay attention to that. That would be maybe a deal breaker for Arkansas. His dad, he would be a legacy. His dad was an All-American lineman back in the day, Sean Andrews, before going on to be an All-Pro in the NFL. He's an in-state kid. Calipari's track record with getting, high-level guys and helping them get to the next level, and then what they do after that. All of that heavily favors Arkansas. Arkansas is the leader in the clubhouse. If, I say it again, I'm going to keep repeating this because it's important. What can upset the apple cart is Missouri or LSU landing a much better NIL purse than Arkansas is willing to do. You can prioritize somebody, but still have a reasonable valuation on a player with a little bit of a range to work with. But why should you go wild and exceed that just because some other school is willing to do that to win a recruiting war? The portal is a high priority. Certainly, Calipari says the high school players will continue to be. This is one of them. Arkansas would love to start 2026 with a commitment from J.J. Andrews. They feel good about where they are. I talked to a source that called me when I was in Texas over the weekend that's really connected with in these circles that thinks it's Arkansas. Okay. But again, I tell you, let's say that between now and the 15th, that one of these other schools steps up and goes to a place with some of these promises, with that NIL bag and with opportunity to play that Arkansas can't, it caps at, that could change and upset it. So just keep an eye on that. We're going to find out soon enough about J.J. Andrews. Very well could end up being the first one off the board. We'll see. All right, so we're 34 minutes in. I'm going to try to go through this quickly with Darius Acuff Jr. He has had a hell of an all-star circuit, and he did it again this past weekend in the lead up to being the MVP of the Iverson Classic All-American game. So we're going to get into some of those details. But while he was getting ready for that event and taking part, most of these all-star games, it's not just one game. It's They arrive a few days before that. They go through practices. They do all kinds of different things. And so it's really kind of neat because you're, again, competing against the best in these scenarios. And you're not just flying in again for a game day and having an all-star game. There's more around it. But while he was taking part in the Iverson Classic multi-day event, he announced a 5-year contract with Reebok. Reebok used to sponsor teams. Just like Nike and Adidas still sponsor college teams and they wear their gear, the teams do, the official, sponsors for those teams. Reebok doesn't do that anymore. They focus on individual players, on the individual and not teams. So they're not providing the gear for college teams now. It's individual players. And so this is an individual contract. I know people are like, what does that mean? Arkansas is a Nike school. Means nothing. Anything he does to represent Arkansas on the court, whatever gear they provide, he'll wear that. But his Reebok deal is outside of that. And it's, again, a 5-year deal. He and Nate Ament, remember Nate Ament signed a Reebok deal. So those are two of the top deals that Reebok went with. They're probably their two primary guys. I'm not saying they don't have other guys they're doing something with, but these are their two primary. So Acuff got that announced while he was taking part in the Iverson Classic event. He won the one-on-one championship. No surprise there, right? This guy's got a bag. He was announced as the Allen Iverson National Player of the Year for this past season, so he gets a National Player of the Year award. And this is one of the prestigious camps, so this isn't like, I announced him the National Player of the Year. This is, there's some hardware that comes with that. So you're excited for him. But he was also the MVP of the game. So everything really lined up well for Darius Acuff Jr. 32 points. He was 14 of 23 from the field, including 2 of 5 from 3. So 40% there on his lowest volume of attempts so far on the All-Star circuit. Only 2 of 4 at the foul line. Who cares? 32 points. He had a double-double, 11 assists, 4 rebounds, a steal in 27 minutes. I think he was a box score plus 9 in his minutes, but it led his team to a 164-151 win, no defense. So you have to take those stats and go, well, that was just a crazy game. But look, put up monster numbers. He continues to be really efficient inside the arc. Now, he's been a mixed bag in these all-star events, shooting from 3. When you look at the McDonald's All-American game and the Jordan Brand Classic, he was awful when you looked at it, the three-point shooting. When you look at the most competitive, well-played game, the one that was actually well-coached and there wasn't that you didn't have lapses of defense and guys just one-offing and doing what they wanted to do, each possession, which you see a lot in these events, including some with Acuff just kind of doing what he wanted to do. But when you looked at the Nike Hoop Summit, again, the most competitive of these 4 events this last few weeks, he was 4 of 8 from 3, and then he was 2 of 5 in this game. So you've got 2 of the games where he was horrendous shooting, and you got 2 of them where he was really good. I mean, 4 of 8 is 50%. Was he 4 of 8 or 3 of 6? And now I've gone. I think he was 4 of 8 in the Nike Hoop Summit, and he was 2 of 5, which is 40% in this Iverson Classic. So a mixed bag there. It was what I have said before on here when I was following him this past season at IMG Academy, watching, paying attention to everything. Statistically, he was like a roller coaster. He had some games where he was efficient, and other games it was just really bad. There wasn't like he was usually around 35%. In some games he spiked to 40, and it settled here at this percentage. No, it was like a huge, big shifts and swings and efficiency. And some players are like that, right? But so at least that's a positive heading into, these guys will be moving in soon. I don't know if he's going to be invited or take part in the 19U FIBA stuff this summer. Probably will be, and we'll see what that looks like. Remember, Anthony Black did that. But being MVP of this Iverson Classic, it's kind of becoming a thing for Razorback signees. I mean, you go back to the 22 class, not only was Nick Smith Jr. the number 1 ranked player in 247 Sports final assessment, but he was the MVP of the Jordan Brand Classic. So get used to it. Now with Calipari here, That was Eric Patrick Melsman's best class, 3 one and done 5 stars ranked. Anthony Black ends up being a lottery pick. Nick Smith Jr. a first rounder, but he was number one in someone's final recruiting rankings, and he was the MVP in one of these games. So Darius Acuff Jr.'s got that same kind of thing going. And Malik Thomas is no slouch. Again, a top 10 rated 5-star guard coming in. Showed well in his 2 appearances, McDonald's All-American game followed by the Jordan Brand Classic. He did not play in the Hoop Summit, although he was part of the Hoop Summit event leading up to the actual All-Star game, or the actual game between Team USA and Team World. He was on the team that played scrimmages against Team USA and Team World that week. So he actually took part in that event, just didn't play in the actual game that capped everything. But Arkansas's got a spool of riches when you look at Acuff and Thomas coming in. 40 minutes in, I'm going to wrap things up. Some of these comments are going too fast, and I'm blurrier than usual today. It was a long weekend, got in late, stayed up late. When you're away from home 3 or 4 days, I'm not one that can put off stuff. I immediately get into my chores list when I get home, and that kept me up for a while. But I also had to squeeze in the finale, the last one ever. I guess the Righteous Gemstone season 4. I had to watch that. I forced myself to watch that with one eye open. You hate to see that run end. It's one of my faves, but that's just the way it goes. All right. Once again, thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being here. Until next time, if something breaks, maybe there's some Terrion Burgess to Arkansas news coming this week. We know J.J. Andrews is the following week, his announcement. We'll see if there's anything else that changes the course for what Arkansas plans to do here. Yeah, we if there's something that comes up, we'll obviously jump back in. We'll probably be back on tomorrow for something. But until next time, thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves. See you soon.